My traditional parents are trying to force me, 28F, into an arranged marriage with my childhood bully, 32M, to unite the families. They're threatening to disown me and withdraw financial support for my disabled sister if I refuse. I never thought I'd be in this situation at 28 years old. My parents have always been traditional, but I naively believed they'd respect my choices as an adult. How wrong I was. Let me give you some background. I'm a 28-year-old woman from a conservative South Asian family. My parents immigrated to the US before I was born, but they've clung tightly to their cultural values and traditions. Growing up, I constantly felt the tension between my American upbringing and my family's expectations. Despite the pressure to be the perfect, obedient daughter, I managed to forge my own path. I went to college, got a good job in marketing, and even moved out on my own, which was a huge source of conflict. I thought I'd finally established my independence. Enter Raj. He's the 32-year-old son of my parents' closest friends from their hometown. Our families have known each other for decades, and there's always been this unspoken expectation that Raj and I would end up together. The problem? Raj was my childhood bully. From ages 8 to 16, he made my life miserable whenever our families got together. He'd tease me relentlessly about my weight, my glasses, my shy personality, you name it. He'd accidentally break my things, exclude me from games, and once even pushed me into a pool when he knew I couldn't swim. I dreaded every interaction with him, and it took years for me to build up my self-esteem after enduring his torment. Even as an adult, being around him brings back all those painful memories and feelings of inadequacy. Raj's family moved back to India when we were teenagers, so I blissfully thought I was free of him. But they returned to the US last year, and suddenly my parents became obsessed with the idea of us getting married. At first, I laughed it off. Surely they couldn't be serious? But over the past few months, the pressure has become relentless. Family dinners turned into awkward matchmaking sessions. My mom started sending me Raj's photos and telling me about his accomplishments. My dad kept talking about how a union between our families would be so prestigious in their community back home. I've tried every excuse in the book. I told them I'm focused on my career. I said I'm not ready for marriage. I even hinted that I might be interested in someone else, a lie, but I was desperate. Nothing worked. Things came to a head last week when my parents sat me down for a serious talk. They laid out their expectations in no uncertain terms. 1. I am to agree to marry Raj within the next 6 months. 2. We'll have a traditional, lavish wedding ceremony in India. 3. I'm expected to quit my job and move in with Raj's family after the wedding. 4. We should start trying for children immediately. I was stunned into silence. When I finally found my voice, I flat out refused. I told them about Raj's bullying, how he made me feel, and how the thought of marrying him made me physically ill. Their response? That was just kids being kids. He's grown up now. You need to let go of the past. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like they were completely dismissing years of emotional trauma. When I stood my ground, they pulled out their trump card. If you don't agree to this marriage, we'll cut you off completely. No more contact with the family. And we'll stop paying for your sister's medical care. Some context: my younger sister has a chronic illness that requires expensive ongoing treatment. Our parents have been covering the costs, which are substantial. My sister can't work due to her condition, and there's no way she could afford the care on her own. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. How could they use my sister's health as leverage? It was cruel beyond words. I left their house in tears, my mind reeling. For the past week, I've been agonizing over what to do. On one hand, the thought of marrying Raj and living the life my parents have planned makes me want to run away and never look back. On the other hand, I'm terrified of what will happen to my sister if I refuse. I've tried talking to my sister about it, but she just gets upset and says she doesn't want to be the reason I'm forced into an unhappy marriage. She insists she'll figure something out, but I know the reality of her financial situation. I feel like I'm being torn in two. My parents are blowing up my phone with manipulative messages, alternating between guilt tripping, "After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us?" and love bombing, "We just want what's best for you, you'll thank us later." Raj, for his part, seems entirely on board with the whole thing. He's been texting me too, acting like we're already engaged. His messages are full of condescending endearments and thinly veiled comments about how he'll whip me into shape once we're married. It makes my skin crawl. I've thought about just eloping or running away, but the guilt over abandoning my sister is overwhelming. I've looked into loans and other ways to cover her medical expenses, but nothing comes close to what she needs. I feel like I'm living in a nightmare. How is this happening in 2024? How can my own parents be so blind to my feelings? How can they ask me to sacrifice my entire future for their outdated ideas of family honor? I'm lost, Reddit. I don't know what to do. The thought of giving in makes me feel physically sick, but I also can't bear the idea of my sister suffering because of my choice. Am I selfish for even considering refusing? Is there a way out of this that I'm not seeing? Any advice would be appreciated. I'm desperate for an outside perspective. Edit. Wow, I didn't expect this post to blow up like it did. Thank you all for your support and advice. I've been reading through the comments and crying, both from the kindness of strangers and from finally feeling heard. I'll try to address some of the most common questions/suggestions. 1. Many of you have asked about my sister's specific condition and treatment needs. Without going into too much detail for privacy reasons, she has a rare autoimmune disorder that affects her mobility and requires regular infusions, specialist appointments, and physical therapy. Even with insurance, the out-of-pocket costs are astronomical. 2. Regarding legal action against my parents, while I appreciate the suggestions, I'm not sure this is a route I want to pursue. Despite everything, they're still my parents, and the thought of taking them to court is difficult to stomach. Plus, I'm worried it would just make the situation worse. 3. To those asking why I can't cover my sister's expenses, I've been contributing what I can, but my entry-level marketing salary doesn't come close to covering the full cost of her care. I've been looking into better paying jobs, but it's a process. 4. Many have suggested I reach out to domestic violence organizations or cultural associations that help women in my situation. This is great advice that I hadn't considered. I'll definitely look into it. 5. To everyone sharing their own stories of escaping arranged marriages or healing from childhood bullying, thank you. Your strength and resilience are inspiring, and it helps to know I'm not alone. 6. Some have asked about Raj's side of the story. Honestly, I don't know much about his life now beyond what my parents have told me. I've avoided direct contact with him as much as possible. From what I gather, he's working in his family's business and seems content to go along with whatever his parents want. 7. Regarding my extended family, unfortunately, most of them share my parents' traditional views. There are a few cousins who might be sympathetic, but they're not in a position to help financially. 8. A lot of you have suggested I show this post to my parents. I'm considering it, but I'm also terrified of their reaction if they realize I've shared our family business online. I'm still processing all the advice and support. Right now, I'm leaning towards standing my ground and refusing the marriage, consequences be damned. Several of you have pointed out that giving in will only teach my parents that their manipulation works, which is a good point. I'm going to reach out to some of the organizations suggested and see what resources might be available. I'm also going to have a serious talk with my sister about making a plan for her care that doesn't rely on our parents. One thing is clear, I can't sacrifice my entire future and mental health, even for my sister. As much as I love her, tying myself to an abusive man and family dynamic won't actually help her in the long run. I'll post an update when I have one. Thank you all again for your kindness and support. It means more than you know. Edit 2. Things have escalated quickly, and not in a good way. I'm writing this from my car, parked in a grocery store lot, because I don't know where else to go. I decided to take the advice of many commenters and have an honest, firm conversation with my parents. I went to their house this morning, hoping that if I explained my feelings clearly and calmly, they might finally understand. I was wrong. So wrong. As soon as I started talking about not wanting to marry Raj, my dad exploded. He started yelling about how I was bringing shame to the family, how I was a selfish, ungrateful daughter, and how I was throwing away my one chance at a good life. My mom just sat there crying and saying she didn't know where they went wrong with me. I tried to stand my ground. I told them about how Raj's bullying affected me, how the thought of marrying him made me feel physically ill. I explained that I wanted to marry for love, not family obligation. I even tried appealing to their love for me, asking if they really wanted their daughter to be unhappy for the rest of her life. Nothing got through. My dad's face got redder and redder as I talked. Then he did something I never thought he'd do. He raised his hand as if to slap me. He didn't actually hit me, my mom grabbed his arm, but the intent was clear. In that moment, I saw my whole future flash before my eyes. If I gave in, this would be my life. Walking on eggshells, living in fear, my opinions and feelings dismissed or met with violence. I left immediately. My dad was still yelling as I walked out the door, saying I was dead to them if I didn't come to my senses. I drove away in a daze and ended up here, in this parking lot, trying to figure out what to do next. I'm scared to go back to my apartment in case my parents or Raj show up there. To make matters worse, I just got a call from my sister. Apparently, our parents called her right after I left. They told her that her medical support was being cut off immediately because of my selfish behavior. She was in tears, alternating between begging me to reconsider and insisting she'll be fine without the treatments. I feel like my whole world is crumbling around me. I knew my parents were traditional, but I never thought they'd go this far. I'm terrified, heartbroken, and completely lost. Some practical questions for those still following. 1. Should I file a police report about my dad's attempted violence? I'm scared of escalating things, but I also want some kind of record in case things get worse. 2. Are there any emergency housing options for situations like this? I don't feel safe going back to my apartment, but I can't afford a hotel long term. 3. How do I protect myself legally? Should I be worried about my parents trying to force this marriage through other means? 4. Has anyone dealt with getting emergency medical coverage for a sibling? Are there programs that might help my sister in the short term? I'm sorry for dumping all of this on you, Reddit. I never imagined things would get this bad. Any advice or support would be deeply appreciated. I feel so alone right now. Edit 3. I'm overwhelmed by the outpouring of support and practical advice. You've all given me strength when I needed it most. Here's a quick update on where things stand. 1. I'm safe. A kind Redditor who works with a women's shelter in my area reached out privately. They've arranged emergency housing for me for the next few weeks while I figure out my next steps. 2. I've filed a police report about the incident with my father. The officers were understanding and have officially documented the situation. They've also given me information about getting a restraining order if necessary. 3. Several lawyers have offered pro bono consultations. I have appointments set up to discuss protecting myself legally and exploring options for my sister's care. 4. Speaking of my sister, an amazing group of Redditors with experience in medical billing and patient advocacy have formed a little task force to help navigate her insurance and treatment options. We're exploring several promising leads for continuing her care without our parents' support. 5. I've changed all my passwords, locked down my social media, and set up a new phone number. I'm laying low for now and only communicating with my sister through secure means. 6. To those who've offered financial help, I'm deeply touched, but I'm not comfortable accepting money from strangers on the internet. Instead, I've set up a fundraiser for the domestic violence organization that's helping me. If you want to help, please consider donating there. 7. I'm working with a therapist who specializes in cultural family trauma. It's early days, but having a space to process everything is already making a difference. The road ahead is still long and uncertain, but for the first time in weeks, I feel a glimmer of hope. I'm scared, but I'm also discovering a strength I didn't know I had. To everyone who shared their stories, offered advice, or just sent words of encouragement, thank you from the bottom of my heart. You've reminded me that I'm not alone, and that there are good people in this world willing to help a stranger in need. I don't know what the future holds, but I know this: I will not let anyone, not my parents, not Raj, not cultural expectations, dictate my life or my worth. I am breaking the cycle of abuse and forging my own path. I'll update again when I can. Until then, please know that your support has made a real, tangible difference in my life.